What is up, guys? It is Styx here, and according to popular demand and requests, I will be doing a Titan hammer build, though updated with the current new stat system, as well as our weapons, perks, and armor sets that will be matching with this kind of setup. Ignore my very goofy looking Titan. There's not a whole lot you can get to match with the exotic with this build, Wormgod Caress. If you absolutely hate how Wormgod Caress looks, then Synthoceps is a good replacement, but it is a little bit more conditional and technically provides slightly less maximum damage. It's also a little bit harder to keep uptime on when you're dealing with something like a boss. Wormgod Caress causes your melee kills or finisher kills to escalate your melee damage, which will decay over time. Higher levels of it also grant increased weapon damage. We will make very good use of this, and then if you were to use Synthoceps, being surrounded buffs your damage and weapon handling. The exotic weapon we want to use with this build is probably going to be Outbreak Perfected. It's very consistent and can do a little bit of everything, and it will pair pretty well with our two legendary options and with dealing with champions. Before we get into the subclass, if you want to support the channel, you go to advance.gg and use code STYXIER10 for 10% off on their premium supplements. First of all, for the super, we will go with Burning Maul. It's very nice for damage, very consistent. For our class ability, we will be using Rally Barricade. This does several things, one of which is when you're in a fire team, it will draw hostile fire while you stand behind it. This will give us the ability to basically taunt enemies for our fire team, and since our healing and survivability are very high on this build, that will be very beneficial to the whole group. In addition to that, it increases weapon reload speed, stability, and range, as well as being something you can peek over whenever you're aiming down sights while crouched behind it. We will be using whatever lift you want. I like using either strafe lift or catapult lift. They're just my favorites to use. A mandatory is the throwing hammer solar melee. That's what the whole build is about. I use the thermite grenade because I get very consistent use out of it, and the scorch is really beneficial to the playstyle with this build. Our aspects will be Sol Invictus, which causes solar ability final blows, super impacts, and defeated scorched targets to create sunspots. While standing in a sunspot, your abilities will regen faster and your super will drain more slowly. And it also grants you restoration to enter those sunspots. In addition to that, this is another scorch application. Our other aspect will be Roaring Flames. Final blows with solar abilities or ignitions will increase the damage of our solar abilities. This stacks up to 3 times. This combines really well with Wormgod Caress because while you're running around getting kills with the hammer, for Wormgod Caress to activate, it will also get you stacks of Roaring Flames. The fragments are going to be Ember of Torches, powered melee attacks, so pretty much all of our melee attacks will give us and nearby allies Radiant. Ember of Solace, Radiant and Restoration, have increased duration when they're applied to you. Ember of Searing, defeating scorched targets, grants melee energy and creates a fire sprite. It also gives you some extra class energy. Ember of Empyrean, solar weapon or ability final blows, extend the duration of restoration and radiant effects applied to you. This takes a little bit of health, but health doesn't really do a whole lot in PvE, so there's no need to worry about it. Our stat distribution is pretty important here. You're going to want to hit ideally 150 to 160 melee, and then run 2 melee fonts, or if you've got some really nicely rolled gear, you can try and just go for 200 melee outright. As you can see, I'm only using tier 2 and tier 3 gear because I don't gear out my Titan very heavily. I don't play it as much. And the few high stat gear rolls I've gotten were not amazing. So my stats are pretty limited. Your next priority, I'm going to say, is your super. You want it to be ideally at 100, but I would say go for at least 70. And then after that, you want to go for weapons. Get the weapons as high as you can afterwards. Your health does not matter at all. You can leave it at 0 if you really want. The health per orb is not going to matter in comparison to the amount of restoration you're going to generate and other forms of healing from other aspects of the build. Your grenade and class stats will be based on your own personal preference. For the seasonal mods, I'm going to highly recommend running Fever and Chill. This will make it so rapid precision hits with solar weapons will grant Radiant, and rapid precision hits with stasis weapons will grant Frost Armor. I'll also be using Reciprocal Draw, so rapid non-sidearm final blows will grant sidearms a period of increased damage for a short time. I'll be combining this with refresh threads, picking up an elemental pickup matching your subclass, so in this case a fire sprite, will grant energy to our least charged ability. Wonderful, more ability regeneration. And stasis or strand debuffed non-boss combatants will take increased solar damage from all sources. Most of our damage will be solar. This is just good in general. Another option you can run here instead of one of these that I have listed is Elemental Daze. Stunning a champion with an elemental weapon creates an elementally aligned explosion, applying a matching elemental debuff to them and nearby targets, most likely Scorched. And then Elemental Coalescence. Defeating targets has a chance to create an elemental pickup, a fire sprite, matching your equipped super element. So just lots of abilities, lots of restoration, lots of everything. And then for our final two, you're going to want to go with Radiant Shrapnel, so sustained weapon damage while Radiant will almost always be Radiant, will cause solar projectiles to fly out of the enemy, and they deal damage and Scorch. This further feeds into that whole Scorch playstyle. And Shield Crush, so that when we are Radiant, our grenade will recharge faster and deal increased damage. And if we go with Frost Armor and Woven Mail or a Void Overshield, our melee will recharge faster and deal increased damage. For your armor mods, you can copy what I have here, but if you want a general idea, I run one hands-on mod in addition to a Solar Strand Dual Siphon. Realistically, if you don't use any strand here, I ran this in the case of sometimes using the new Strand Rocket Pulse Rifle, and then you can run a singular Solar Siphon using your Harmonic Siphon and then use two hands-on mods. That works really well. In the gauntlets, I use two melee fonts. The armor pieces I use for damage resistance. The legs I use for solar weapon surges. As far as I'm aware, the weapon surges do give you more damage than just running a weapons font right now. That might change in the future, or my information might be incorrect. Feel free to let me know if you find otherwise. And then for the class item, it's all about class ability generation. Class font, Reaper, Bomber. For the weapons, like I mentioned, Outbreak Perfected in our kinetic slot. Another good option could be Mint Retrograde. That's why I mentioned the potential Strand Dual Siphon there. And then for our energy weapon, I highly recommend running either Returned Memory with a heal clip roll. I like Heal Clip and Burning Ambition, further build into that Scorched aspect, or Funutria Farah, the Arms Weak hand cannon, and then I like running it with 1-2 Punch, and then either Slide Shot or Proximity Power because that's the role I have. I personally really like the Proximity Power if I'm planning on doing something like a solo ops where I control all the kills I get, and then I'm also running a bit lower than the 160 melee stat that I want. So that lets me teeter over the edge there a little bit. Returned Memory, I would say, is the best in all-round content, though. It plays really well into our sidearm seasonal mod. It also rules Heal Clip, which is really, really nice to have. And then Burning Ambition, which deals Scorch pretty frequently, which stacks with everything else to cause enemies to ignite. For the heavy weapon, I have two primary options that are both legendary weapons here, one of which is an Unwavering Duty, the Trials machine gun. My current favorite role is 4th times the Charm and Bait and Switch. Another role I would really like on it is probably Envious Assassin and Bait and Switch. Both are great. Or an Outrageous Fortune with a similar setup. Mine just has the Bait and Switch, but if you could get something like Envious Arsenal or Envious Assassin here, then that would be ideal. Even autoloading holster would be good. For armor sets, I highly recommend rocking a 4-piece Lustrous set if you can help it. If you don't have it though, it's not the end-all be-all. A 2-piece trial set, the 2-fold crown, healing you whenever you pick up an ammo brick is also extremely nice, so do keep that in mind. If you enjoy the content, feel free to support me by either using my advanced.gg link I mentioned earlier, or my Patreon is in the description. If you have any feedback, leave a comment down below, like the video, and subscribe. Peace, gamers.